Hello, this is Hayden Scott, EMS University San Antonio, EMS Program Manager. Now we're going to go over Lesson 310, EMS Response to Terrorism. Terrorism is defined as a violent act dangerous to human life to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. Domestic terrorism is directed at a government or a population without foreign direction. It's often fragmented and leaderless. International terrorism is foreign-based. Um, the activities range across national boundaries, often religious or politically motivated. Um, Again, with types of terrorism, you've got the weapons of mass destruction, or WMDs. These are categorized by chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear explosive. Uh, of course, everybody remembers September 11th, 2001, um, probably one of the biggest acts of international terrorism to date. Responder safety. Remember, first responders may be targets. So consider the possibility of secondary devices and events. Of course, you need to utilize your standard operating procedures and protocols. And as always, never compromise your own safety. Location is usually a very big key. They generally tend to go after symbolic or historic targets, such as the White House, IRS offices, and other governmental buildings. They also go for public buildings and assembly areas, like shopping malls and convention centers. Um, Again, you got the controversial businesses, the nuclear facilities, and the family planning offices. World Trade Center would fall under these categories as well. And then infrastructure systems, power plants, and hospitals are two of the biggest. The types of events are the explosions or incendiary devices, incidents involving firearms, as well as non-trauma MCIs. The timing of events is also key. They usually tend to happen on national holidays, as well as anniversaries of other terrorist events. Some on-scene warning signs to look after are unexplained patterns of illness, chemical containers, unusual items at the locations, uh, as well as fires with unusual behavior. Um, Possible protection measures are time, shielding, as well as distance. Self-protection at chemical incidents, you should always be very cautious of secondary devices. Um, and you also want to make sure that your victims are not uh, the actual bombers. You want to use personal protective equipment at all times. Doesn't matter what the situation is, always, always, always use your PPE. You want to limit your exposure time as well. Of course, you want to use the buddy system and or a rapid intervention team in these events. Of course, you want to use time, distance, and shielding, as well as decontamination procedures. These are going to be key, especially in your chemical incidents. Um, with your explosive incidents, you want to again be cautious of your secondary devices, as well as ensuring the victims are not actually the bombers. Here we see the dissemination of agents. Now let's discuss strategy and tactics. Strategies are generally broad plans. However, tactics are specific methods to achieve these strategies. The initial considerations for isolation are to determine the severity of the danger, control the scene and size it up, isolate the hazard area, which is always the biggest priority is the isolation, attempt to evacuate based on the hazards, and establish the perimeter control. For the perimeter control, you want to have the outer perimeter, which is the most distant boundary line. Of course, you want to restrict all public access beyond it. The inner perimeter isolates the known hazards inside the outer perimeter. Notification. Of course, you want to notify federal and state support agencies during a suspected or known terroristic event. This is usually done via your dispatch centers. Identification may or may not be possible. Do not endanger yourself in order to identify. Report obvious signs or indicators. Note the placards and labels. Always use your emergency response guidebook. Every ambulance has one. Um, so know how to use it, know how to read the placards and the labels. It's all in the guidebook. Of course, report unusual patterns of illness. Protection. The EMTs are responsible for protecting themselves and their people by performing an initial scene survey, requesting security, be it police or military, establish vehicle staging and treatment areas, as well as advising EMS command of concerns, suspicious people, and or activities. This concludes section 310 on the emergency response to terrorism. If you have any questions, please direct them to the instructor.